And that's what we want for people who have had birth trauma, is to reclaim the potency. Because my ultimate passion is to give people the tools they need from a body perspective so that they can no longer have birth trauma. They can just have the experience of how they were born. And it is an integrated event, not a forever trauma. And the children are not acting out the hidden stories of birth, or the adults in partnership. Get the tools and get the resources, and once we have no longer carried shock in our system, then we're not so reactive, and we're much more able to think clearly and to act in ways that are congruent and help us to thrive. As I talk about birth trauma, I want to give you the perspective from a parent, how to be helpful, how to think about it. Personally, how do you help yourself? And then professionally, when do you need to refer? When do you inquire and support someone? We had a technical problem online, and it was a perfect demonstration of how distracting a very intense birthing room experience can be.
We're here.
Getting a lot of background noise. I know you're here. Can you mute? Can you mute?
Thing for work. So I'm sorry.
Hello, everybody.
My name is Judith.
So let's play with this, because this is what's happening. In some cultures, the mother goes off by herself to give birth so she can stay connected and focused with the baby. All of that stuff going on is like being in the womb when all this stuff is going on outside.
Okay, so he was saying.
But it's a very interesting experiment we're having. I worked with one client whose mother got in a screaming match with the doctor while she was giving birth. And you can imagine how that felt to the baby, and the sense of connection and support and protection during the birth itself. Oh, I think I got them. Yay, I became more competent. But I love the fact that we got to have that experience of chaos, because that's what happens in a birth that becomes traumatic. The infant is used to the experience of being in relationship with primarily the mother and her rhythms and her energetic field. Ideally, the father as well, maybe the other siblings. The potency of the birth ignition and the soul into body. It's like, oh, here you are. That birth itself was just a moment in time. Birth is not a forever trauma. That's really what we want to know, that birth is not a forever trauma. Because what happens with birth trauma is the connection gets interrupted. The connection with the mother, the connection sometimes with the baby's own body, their through line of finding their way through the birth canal. And birth is a very rotational process. Literally, the baby has to rotate 180 degrees and spiral out. Everybody put your hands on your head front to back. I want you to feel, okay, so just measure, okay, this is my front to back dimension.
Then put your hands side to side. Quite a difference, huh? Front to back, side to side. So our front to back is our longest need for space. So that's why a baby will enter the mama's pelvis, ideally sideways, because that's where the most room is. But then that's called the pelvic inlet. The pelvic outlet has more room, not side to side, not sideways, but front to back because of the movement of the tailbone. So that means orientation, literally spatial planes, that the baby comes in and then has to rotate to get out. How many of you struggle with directions? Yeah, or if you get disoriented easily. Sometimes that can start right at birth, especially if there was anesthesia, because anesthesia comes in during that. It depends when the anesthesia was delivered, but it comes in and it creates confusion for the baby. All of a sudden, they're not connected to the mother. They're not sometimes connected to their own body. And there's still this incredible force to get born, life or death. And so that produces psychological things that are precognitive. Before we can think, we're having experience in ourselves. And the experiences are informing the body. Is the world safe? Will I survive? Will I survive in relation? So in this process of how do you deal with interruption? How do you deal with intensity? How do you deal with excitement?